All right, guys, welcome back to what will be our final week of regular season predictions as we are going to be going into week 18 this week after we talk about week 17. Just a couple, not really much to go over in week 17. Obviously, a couple big things, but other than that, nothing really too huge. Starting out on Thursday night, Dallas takes care of business against Tennessee as they should. Tennessee now on a 6-game losing streak. They
Yeah,
were
I don't know what happened to that team. I knew that they were probably going to struggle offensively, considering that they lost AJ Brown, but I didn't think it would be this bad. That now onto their third starting quarterback. And yeah, it seems like without Derrick Henry or Ryan Tannehill, they really don't have anything. So, and I think we kind of saw that with the Cowboys.
Yeah,
Or
so
against the Cowboys.
Cowboys exposed them, keeping their hopes alive for a division title because the Eagles couldn't take care of business, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But next we go on to the Arizona Atlanta game, and keep in mind this entire week there was only one game that we picked different, which we'll get to when we get there. But the Arizona Atlanta game, this was just a battle of two really bad teams. They both looked bad. I don't even really know what the score was. I did not look at this game at all.
20 to 19. I was so close to picking Atlanta, but the week before I picked Atlanta, it didn't go well, and I thought that the Cardinals could win, but they didn't. So
And
should have
that
trusted like
that
that.
was Desmond Ritter's first NFL win. So
Yeah,
uh, big
going up against
big for
the
him.
great David Blau.
Uh, going to the this is one of the biggest blowouts of the week in the Chicago Lions game. That was huge, and I picked Detroit solely because I wanted this matchup that's coming up this week to be a good one, and needed to be done. And Detroit comes in and beats the brakes off of the Bears, wins 41-10.
Yeah, just a huge confidence booster for the Lions. Has to be said, because they've had some up and downs, and now that Washington has lost, they put themselves in a playoff position, and it's coming down to this last game against the Packers. So, even if they don't make it, I think this is an ultimately good year for the Lions. They're starting to find the identity of the team for the first time since probably they had Stafford and the Megatron teams. So good for Detroit.
Just imagine if Detroit could win those close games that they had this season. They would already be in a playoff spot.
Yeah,
Like
that's weird to think about.
if their defense had found themselves a little bit earlier, this team would already be locked into a playoff spot, which is crazy. Going to the Chiefs game, Chiefs go in, take care of business, beat the Broncos. Nothing
It
too
was
big.
closer than I expected. Though.
Yeah,
It
it
was
was a close
27
game.
24.
I mean, that's a division game. I don't really.
Yeah, but it's still the struggling Broncos, and I didn't think it'd be that close. But it could just be the Chiefs kind of resting at this point.
Maybe, but I mean, they're not going to be able to do that next week, which we'll get into
Um,
a little bit later. New England and Miami, which had some playoff implications, but I mean, they now put them both on level playing fields going into this next week
and
with New
that's
England
really weird to
beating
think about.
Miami.
That's weird to think about, considering how good of a start Miami went off to, and how kind of
How
uneventful it seems
catastrophic
the
they're.
Patriots have been. Yeah, it's weird to think that these two teams are level. But I think part of it's down to the injuries that Tua has sustained, and I think is ultimately the reason for the Dolphins losing this one.
Uh, Giants tear apart the Colts. Not much to talk about there. Uh,
And they secure a playoff spot.
yeah, that's a big piece of it is they secure a playoff spot, and which leads to the Eagles game, who could
Well,
not beat
but
the.
but first, with this Giants Colts game, we have to talk about the Snow Angel.
Oh, I didn't even. I heard about that. I don't entirely know what happened. What happened?
Yeah, so Nick Foles was sacked and got hurt, and he
Oh,
was
that's
on the
right.
ground getting medical attention, and then Kayvon Thibodeau was just laying next to him doing a snow angel,
Yeah,
or
but
motioning a snow angel.
it was right next. It was right after the play, wasn't it? it's not like he was sitting there while he's getting medical attention. He's like,
Well, there were people around him, but he was Nick Foles was down, and then Kayvon Thibodeau was just next to him doing
if
a
it was
spelling.
if it was like a significant amount of time after the injury, then that's a little messed up. But if it was right after the sack, everyone celebrates after they get a sack.
Yeah. I just think it was kind of funny seeing
I
Nick
did
Foles
see that
on the
on.
ground and then Thibodeau.
I
just
saw
doing
that
spelling.
online though. But that leads to the Eagles not being able to beat the Saints, which I mean ultimately the Eagles offense was terrible. That's really the only thing you could talk about is the Eagles offense was terrible. They should have had a chance to come back in the second half. The defense shut down the Saints offense, but I mean the Eagles they didn't get a first down until there was 30 seconds left in the first half. There's no
Yeah,
reason for that.
that's sad. They didn't really run the ball that often, even though Miles Sanders had some success. He was 12 for 61
So
for 5.1.
Miles Sanders was also had a knee brace on, so he's not completely healthy.
Yeah, but even then, he was able to get quality yards. I'm surprised
They
at this
also
offense
they
'cause
also got
put up.
hosed by a botched holding call. So there was a 28 yard touchdown by Kenny Gainwell, and uh, Landon Dickerson had his guy, and the defenseman reached out to try to tackle Gainwell, and when he did, he lost his footing, and Landon Dickerson fell on him, and the refs called a holding, but it wasn't a holding. He didn't do anything wrong. His hands were right here, and he just fell. So they got botched on that, and that would have made it I think it would have been a 13-7 game at that point, and then they got a long touchdown later, which would have made it 14-13. So, I mean, there was a botched holding call there. Ultimately, you can't really blame it on that. The offense was terrible to
Yeah,
begin with, so.
yeah. You guys couldn't get first downs, but it's still shocking to me because you put up 37 against the
Yeah,
Cowboys, and
I
I
don't know what the
personally
fall
thought
off.
the Cowboys' defense was better than the Saints, even though both are good. But
I
this week, you struggled against the Saints' defense, and
That's rough.
yeah, yeah.
But you know what that means? That means that no quarterback can just come in and play in this offense.
I mean, yeah, it's a good thing for Jalen Hurts' MVP hopes, even though I don't think he'll get
He
it
won't be
because
getting it now because he's
yeah,
hurt.
because he missed 2 games and he just won't get it. But it does look a lot better for him at this point.
All right, so now the only game we picked differently was the Bucks and the Panthers, and I picked the Panthers. You picked the Bucks. I thought I saw the game early. I'm like, the Panthers are gonna pull this off,
I was worried.
and
I was
then
really worried.
I saw the Bucks come back, and I'm like, you know what? It's Tom Brady. It's one of the last weeks in the season, and he's fighting for a playoff spot. Was I the least bit surprised? No, I wasn't. Not even a little bit.
You can't be shocked by Tom Brady, but I will say I was a little worried. I'm glad my prediction held up because I just didn't think that the Panthers could season sweep them, and I ended up be right. But it was a good game for Sam Darnold. He had almost 350 yards of passing, 3 touchdowns. He did throw a pick, but
That's still
yeah,
really good for Sam Darnold.
yeah, that's amazing for Sam Darnold. But Brady he played better.
All right, and you guys are eliminated with a loss to the Browns with a little bit of help from some other teams, but ultimately can't beat the Browns to keep your playoff hopes alive.
Carson Wentz played awful. Those 3 picks were disgusting. Tristan, did you see them?
I didn't see. This was a 1 o'clock game, wasn't it?
Yeah, don't look it up. But
I was watching the Eagles game, so I
he
didn't see
threw
it.
3 awful picks. Look, I don't know why we started him because it was clear that the team played better under Heineke. They were more motivated. The defense played like crap, but we can't really blame them because they've been covering for the offense pretty much all year, and it's just not like reasonable to think that they're going to do that every single week. And it just so happened this week when we really needed to win, and just the disappointing end of the season, and to put the cherry on the proverbial mud pie. After the game,
Ron
Ron
Rivera
Rivera was
didn't
being
even know.
yeah, he was doing a press conference, and reporter, I think it was Grant Paulson actually, who's associated with 106.7, and he does a lot of stuff around here. And he said, "Did you know that you could be eliminated or something like that?" And Ron Rivera's like, "What?" how do you not know that?
I mean,
It's a franchise that spends millions of dollars, millions and billions of dollars, and you should know where you are every single point in the season. Every single other team has done that, so I don't understand why he didn't know. And I did hear a counterpoint where it's, oh, they're only thinking of winning, but you should always know where you are, especially when you're in a close playoff battle.
I was going to say, he was probably more focused on trying to win to make sure he could get that playoff spot. So, I mean, maybe he thought with that tie that it would have been a closer race, but
It's that's going to be the biggest, I think, thing to come out of Ron Rivera's tenure. We could be eliminated. That soundbite. And listen, I like Ron Rivera. He seems like a good leader of people. He seems like a great guy. But the sad truth of this league is the game passes people by, and I think we've kind of seen that. It's just been nothing but mediocrity and just below mediocrity. And where we are is we're in football hell, in my opinion. We're not good enough to make the playoffs, but we're not bad enough to be a top 5 pick. We're going to be probably anywhere from the 13th to the 15th pick. And I honestly think that's the worst place to be in any sports, whether it's hockey, baseball, or football. So we got a rough road coming up, but depending on how this owner thing shakes out, I think we could be getting a new head coach in the offseason.
Jacksonville goes into Houston, beats the Texans. No surprise there. But with that, so this past week, just real quick, this past week for the Jaguars and the Titans meant absolutely nothing. So no matter what had happened this week, this an upcoming game between the Texans and the Titans decides who gets into the playoffs between those two, which I'll talk a little bit more about when we get there. But I just want to mention that. So, but Jacksonville goes in and beats Houston, and the Titans lose to Dallas, like I said. But going to what was a way more interesting game than it probably should have been was San Fran going to the Las Vegas and having to go to
Raiders
overtime with
do
them.
the most Raiders move ever. This game, I think, has been like this sums up their season. You play good, you have a close game, but you still lose, and they've had so many games like that this season, and it's probably tough for the Raiders, but at the end of the day, I just think that the 49ers are such a better team. They have one of the best defenses in the league, even though they gave up 34.
So, well, couple pieces there. For one, the Raiders were playing with a backup quarterback. Derek Carr is out for the rest of the season with personal issues.
You're playing with Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah, Jarrett Stidham. He was a backup for the Patriots for a while. But also, this was the first time Brock Purdy had to come back, and he did. Like, he came back, went into overtime. The defense held up in overtime, and they won the game. Like, it was a good game overall for Brock Purdy. I mean, not a great game overall for the 49ers. Their defense was shown that they're human, but
you're going to have games like that.
Yeah, Brock Purdy came out, and he led the team to a win, which is what they needed.
So. Yeah, and depending on how the playoffs shake out, I honestly think next season that it could be a genuine competition between Brock Purdy and Trey Lance whenever he comes back. I think Jimmy G, his tenure has possibly come to an end here, considering how Brock Purdy has been playing.
Yeah.
So that I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens in San Francisco with a quarterback.
Agreed. All right, battle of the old Geno team versus the new Geno team, and new Geno came out on top. They beat the Jets. The Seahawks keep their playoff hopes alive with that win, and I'm not entirely sure how it's all going to shake out, but Seattle, Detroit, and Green Bay all fighting for that final wild card spot.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of poetic. Geno Smith goes to his old team, the team that released him, and he not only beats them, but he eliminates them from playoff contention. So I think that's a little bit of poetic justice, and I think that's cool to see.
And the other game that I requested was in favor of one team just for an upcoming week matchup was the Packers against the Vikings. And the Packers did just about the exact same thing that Detroit did.
Yeah, the Packers just completely shut down the Vikings. Why can't I
Jair
think?
Alexander locked down Justin
Yeah,
Jefferson.
Justin Jefferson was just cold the entire game, and I think there's definite questions about this team now. I think a lot of people are comparing them to that 2020 Steelers team, the one that started 11-0, and then Washington beat them. I think it was a Monday night game, and then they kind of fell down from there. So yeah, it's a big game not only for the Packers, but that's a big loss for the Vikings, and I think it's going to give a lot of other teams confidence if they were to come up against the Vikings in the playoffs.
And I think that takes away the Vikings' ability to get the first seed.
Yeah,
If
I think that
I
eliminated
I
them.
am doing my math correctly. So now the only two teams, well, three teams fighting for the first seed would be Dallas, San Fran, and the Eagles. But the Eagles control their fate, which is huge.
Yeah,
Uh, Also, there was something. Oh, seems like Justin Jefferson is a very streaky receiver. Yet he's still the
yeah,
number one receiver in yards this season,
yeah.
which
It's
is
because when
just
he
kind of
explodes, it
crazy.
seems like he really really explodes. But then you have a game like this where he's almost a
Yeah, because
non-factor.
against the Eagles he did nothing. Against the Packers he did nothing. And I want to say there were one or two other games where he didn't really do much.
Yeah, and I think that part of it's down to I think Kirk Cousins is a little streaky as well. So I think it's the result of that. But I do think some of it's ultimately down to him and how he's just not as consistent. Even but saying that he's still leading the league in yards. He's still a premier receiver in this league and will be for years
A
to come.
while. Uh, Going to the Battle of L.A. Nothing surprising here. Chargers
Nope.
beat the Rams. Uh, and then a big surprise on Sunday night, and the Ravens lose to the Steelers.
I almost predicted this one, but yeah, it's a little surprising for me because the Ravens they still had their run game, like the running backs are still healthy, and I just didn't think the Steelers would be able to do it. But we should have known when a winning record is on the line, Mike Tomlin's going to come through.
That's Are they 8-8?
Yeah,
They're now 8-8. Wow, Mike Tomlin can still keep his record alive.
and
That's
that
huge.
is if you don't know what we're talking about. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing record with the Steelers, and I think that's very impressive.
That's really impressive for an NFL head coach of any sort.
And considering how long he's been their head coach,
But yeah, and Tyler Huntley didn't play well either.
no,
That was
he's
not a good
no.
game for him, and that was what killed him at the end. And Monday night, we didn't have anything to go off of because, as many of you are aware, and if you're not, the Damar Hamlin situation where he had cardiac arrest on the field. Luckily now, though, we're recording this on Friday. That happened on Monday night, and we have had a full series of events go on over the week. He's now back. He is now closer to being healthy than he ever was. He's breathing and speaking on his own.
Yeah,
Can
and neurologically he's intact, which is a big thing
everything? Yeah,
considering his
everything's
heart
still intact
stopped.
for him.
Yeah,
So that's huge. And I mean, I didn't see I didn't see it live. I saw it after the fact, and it was just weird because everything seemed so normal. I mean, I've probably seen that same type of tackle year after year, day after day, game after game. Like I've seen that thing a million times. It was just a very like insane freak accident, but luckily he'll be healthy and he should be able to come back and probably play in the playoffs.
I don't know about that, but
He's I
he'll
mean,
definitely play next year.
well, yeah, he'll definitely be back next year, but I think ultimately he could be back in the playoffs. There was a case in 1998 where Chris Pronger actually he took a puck to the chest. Same thing happened to him. He underwent cardiac arrest on the ice, had to get resuscitated on the ice, went to the hospital, and he ended up back on the ice 4 days later. I mean, obviously everyone's body reacts differently, and
Yeah,
I'm not saying that's gonna happen but I'm saying I think he could end up being a he could end up playing in the playoffs.
he
So,
could, but I just think that the Bills are going to keep him out just as a precautionary.
and he also FaceTimed with his team this
Yeah, I
today.
did see
So
that.
he got to
Yeah, they removed the breathing tube, so he no longer requires that. So that is awesome to see. Considering how scary that was, I think that event is one of those 1 in 100 things,
Yeah,
and
1 in 1,000,000.
yeah, it just happened to be that one time where it's going to happen. Because, like, if you see the hit, it didn't
So
look
yeah, what
anything.
happened is like you have to you have to get hit in the chest right over the heart at the exact perfect time for that to happen. So it is a
Yeah,
very rare chance that it happens. But
yeah, yeah. So
it's huge that he's back.
I'm glad. I'm
It
glad to see
shocked the
him.
world. I think everyone was in shock. You saw all the everyone go into prayer for him. So I mean,
But
it
one
was
cool
huge.
thing to see was his. He has a toy drive charity. It went from like $20,000 to
Yeah,
something, and
to
right now
like
I think it's like
3.5
up to
million.
yeah, six. Last I saw was up to like 6 million.
Wow.
So
Yeah, it's huge.
that's really cool to see, and to see that the whole league really united around
Yeah.
him, and even teams like the Sabres, even like other sports league embrace that. So that's cool to see unity, because we really don't see that often anymore.
I saw on someone's story they did, I don't know if it was a moment of silence or what, but they did some type of memorial for him at the Caps game when they played the
Yeah.
Sabres.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was kind of cool to see everyone unite behind him, but looks like he should be back and healthy relatively soon. Uh moving on to next week though. Moving on to next week. Now, that does send in some kind of questionable things for this upcoming week. The AFC is now kind of all jumbled up because the Chiefs, the Bengals, and the Bills are all in line for that first seed. So now it
Yeah.
kind of makes all those teams have to play because had the Bills won, that would have eliminated the Bengals from getting that chance. But if the Bengals won, they still would have had that. There's a whole lot of stuff going on now in the AFC, which kind of shakes it up.
Yeah, and
They're
I don't know how they're gonna work that
Yeah,
out.
I think they're gonna wait until after this week to see what happens because it's gonna be very hard to try to put that game in motion because you can't you can't stuff it into this week because obviously football is a very tolling sport on your body. There's a reason they only play one game per week unless you have that short week with the Thursday night. So you can't put them in and stuff them in at the end of this week because then they're at a disadvantage come the playoffs for the team who doesn't get that first round bye. You can't push everything back because all those reservations and everything for stadiums and hotels and everything messes all that up. It kind of throws everything into a loop. It's very confusing. That's way above my pay grade. So I know that. I also just read something that mentioned a chance of a neutral site for the AFC
The AFC
Championship
Championship.
and
Yeah.
championship game, which would be huge. So I don't know. I think they're gonna wait until after this week to see what happens because if the Bengals lose and the Chiefs lose and the Bills win, then the Bills should have it by themselves. I mean, it's very confusing. Maybe they do what in the NHL they did on the shortened COVID year where they just went by winning percentage because not everyone had the same amount of games. So some it would be like 50, 52, 54 games and they just go by winning percentage. So it's going to be
Yeah.
interesting to see how they attack it, but not I don't think anything's going to be decided until after this week. So going on to this week, we got a couple Saturday games and then the rest are Sunday games. Nothing on Thursday, nothing on Monday. So starting out, Chiefs at the Raiders. I think this is a relatively easy one, at least for me. I think the Chiefs are gonna pull this one out no matter what
Yeah, I do
happens.
too, but I can see this being a very Raiders game where it's kind of closer than you'd think, but they still find a way to lose.
The
So,
Raiders put up a good fight last time they played the Chiefs.
yeah, I'm still going with the Chiefs, but I think that the Raiders will make it a game.
I would have to agree there. Going on to the other, this is a Saturday night game. This is actually going to be my game of the week. It's Tennessee at the Jaguars. And I mean, looking at the rest of the schedule, this week had a chance to be an absolutely insane week, but due to some of the teams underperforming, it feels like they had all the other teams just kind of flipped around. So but I'm going with the Tennessee game as my game of the week, and that's just because this is the game that decides the AFC South. This game is It's going to be hard fought. The Titans are on a 6-game losing streak. Jacksonville has shrieked back from what they were at. I believe Jacksonville is 8-8, and I think Tennessee is 7-9. So
Yeah,
whoever wins this game goes into the playoffs because Tennessee will have a better. They both have the same division record. So no matter what happens, whoever wins this game is going to the playoffs. Like I said, last week meant absolutely nothing. So it's going to be an interesting game to see just if Trevor Lawrence can now do what he was meant to do and clutch up and get his team to the playoffs. And maybe Doug Peterson can get there in what I believe is his first season as the Jacksonville head coach.
it is.
So
Because Dougie got fired like a year.
Urban
or two
Meyer
ago.
got fired and he didn't even finish out the season. So,
Yeah, yeah. Because that was a whole mess that we won't go into.
but that's all set up there. I'm going to go with Jacksonville. I want to see Doug Peterson get back to the playoffs. I think it'd be cool to see Trevor Lawrence lock up a spot for them. And like I said, Tennessee has just been in such a rough spot. They haven't been able to do anything lately.
Yeah, the Jags, I think they're on the come up. They have the momentum going with them, and I just feel like the Titans are just trying to stop themselves from falling even more, and I just don't think they're going to be able to do it.
All right, next, Tampa Bay at Atlanta. If I am thinking correctly, I don't think Tampa Bay needs to play any starters. Now, Tampa's already clinched the division, so I don't think Tampa plays any starters. This week is going to be harder than any other week because
Yeah.
some of these teams aren't going to play their starters. Some of them will. Some of them won't have to, but will play them anyway. Some of them, it's going to be really confusing. Even though that's the case, I still think Tampa Bay will win without their starters, even if they don't play them. I
I
don't
do
know the
too.
entire situation, but I'm going to go with Tampa.
I do too. And the thing about resting your starters, it can be very dangerous. Because a little football history for you. Back when Elway was still with the Broncos in the early '90s, they were the number one seed, and they rested their starters the last week, and they were going up against the Jags, who got in on the last regular season week, and then the Jags ended up beating the number one seeded Broncos because they were just fresh. They had been playing. They had been playing a different style of football, so there is pitfalls to possibly resting your starters.
I mean, Tampa's been playing playoff football though for a while
Yeah.
now because they've been fighting for their life.
Yeah, that's more something that I'm applying to
Yeah.
the whole week.
Ironically, not
Yeah,
literally, but yeah, I still think Tampa should be able to pull it out. Going on to New England at Buffalo, one of those games that'll probably have a big impact on what happens with last week's game. New England, I believe, needing a win here to keep themselves alive in the playoff race. New England, Miami, and Pittsburgh all fighting for that last wild card spot.
yes.
But Buffalo still also in the fight for the number one seed, so they have to play their starters. I'm going with Buffalo.
Yeah, I am too, and I think Buffalo after last week.
I was just
think
about to say they have another thing to play for too.
Yeah, if they were to rest their starters again this week, their starters wouldn't have been playing for 2 weeks, and I just don't think that's something you should be doing going into playoffs, even if you do get the number one seed. I think they will play their stars regardless, and I think they'll get out the win and obviously they're looking to get one for tomorrow.
Going on to the Vikings at the Bears. I don't think the Vikings really have anything to play for here. I think they're kind of locked into that third seed, maybe a second
Yeah.
seed. There's really nothing to go for. I still think they play their starters though, and since I think they're gonna play their starters, I'm gonna go with Minnesota.
I am too, but I can see this game being close.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see if they play their starters because they don't really need to. They're kind of locked in
Yeah.
that second, third space, and that's kind of like a hazy area. But I'm interested to see what happens there. Baltimore at the Bengals. This is a very important game. This decides who wins the AFC North. Because if the Bengals win, they win the AFC North. If Baltimore wins, though, that kind of then again brings in that trouble from last week's game where the Bengals have one less game. They don't have that win there. But with that being said, Baltimore still won't have Lamar Jackson, and Tyler Huntley is questionable. I'm going to go with Cincy here.
I am too. Even if they did have Huntley, I just don't think they're a good enough team to beat the Bengals at this point because they've really struggled to score points. And in order to win, they would need to outscore the Bengals, and I just don't think that's going to happen.
All right. This is a game that I am not even going to remotely be even interested in any way, shape, or form. That's Houston at the Colts.
Ugh.
I'm gonna pick the Houston Texans just to be different, but I don't really know. I think it's a battle of two very bad teams.
I'm gonna go with the Colts because I think the Texans they're gonna try and go for the number one pick, and so I just think they might just throw the game.
Just tank. What is?
Yep.
I don't think. Oh, the Bears are down there in that fight too. So I mean, theoretically, I guess, but not really much. Which I would like to say at the beginning of the season, I said the Bears were going to be my worst team in the league.
I had the Texans.
So we were pretty spot on. All right, this game, when I was going over the games, I thought this game held a little bit more weight, but not as much as I thought it did. The Jets at the Dolphins. Jets already being
eliminated. The Jets
eliminated.
are eliminated. The Dolphins are playing for something. The Jets aren't.
So I'm going to pick Miami because they're actually playing for something. They're fighting for that final spot
still in the reach.
Which they are 2-3 in their division. Say they win, that'd make them 3-3. It's going to be really interesting because I don't know what all the tiebreakers are when it comes to the playoffs.
I don't either.
Carolina at the Saints. I believe both these teams are eliminated. No one really has anything to play for, but you know what? The Saints are hot right now. They've won 4 straight, I believe. 3 or 4 straight after that win against the Eagles. Panthers are hot. It's going to be a decent game. I'm going to go with the Saints, though. Switch it up. I don't remember the last time that I picked the Saints to win a game this season, if I have it all.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Saints, but Sam Darnold has been playing pretty good.
You know what? I'm going to switch it. I'm going to switch to Carolina. One, because I need wins to tie you up. But also, because Carolina has also been hot. So this is one where I kind of want to have a different... I want to have a different pick just because I want one of us to win and one of us to lose. Because it'll be an interesting game. All right, Cleveland at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has something to play for. Not only that winning record for Mike Tomlin, they're still in that playoff hunt.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see them motivated. They have Mike Tomlin, who's, I think, going to really be able to lead them this game. So I'm going to go with the Steelers.
And one of the best head coaches in NFL history.
Yep.
LA Chargers at the Broncos. This is a game where I don't think the Chargers are going to play their starters. They're kind of locked into that 6th spot. And maybe they do because depending on what happens with that Baltimore game, it kind of mess with it. I'm going to pick the Chargers. I'm not entirely sure what's happening there, though.
I am, too. I still think they'll play their starters at least for a half.
Yeah. All right. Eagles at the Giants at the Eagles. Eagles are in a rough spot. They should have already locked up the first seed. This is now for the first seed. If they lose and Dallas wins, Dallas wins the division and the first repeat division winner since 03-04. But I don't think Dallas is going to be a repeat winner. I think the Eagles are finally going to get on their horse. They're going to beat the Giants. I don't think the Giants are going to play their starters. They have no reason to. They're locked into that 6th spot. And I believe Jalen Hurts is going to be coming back this week. So
he's officially listed as questionable, so it's not guaranteed.
But I think just because, first off, you're playing for something huge right now. They need that bye week because they have so many injuries too, so they need that bye week.
Yeah.
They need that. Secondly, Jalen Hurts was throwing the ball last week, so he's just on the brink. He was just on the brink of coming back last week, so I think now he can play this week. So I'm still gonna pick Philly.
Yeah, I am too. I think Jalen Hurts will at least play for a little bit, and I just don't. The Giants have no reason to really play their stars or play all that hard because they know they're going into the playoffs. So, yeah, I'm gonna go with the Eagles.
Except to get back at them for 2 years ago when the Eagles didn't beat the Washington football
Oh
team.
yeah, and then Giants fans got really mad because they didn't make the
Yeah,
playoffs when
exactly.
6 wins.
It's the only reason they have to be to win that.
This pure spite.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, San Fran going against Arizona in San Fran. I think San Fran should handle this easily.
Yeah.
Again, they're playing for that first seed now. They're in the mix. That I don't think anyone saw coming, but they're still fighting for that first seed. If they win, I believe they can get in there. I don't know. It's a very confusing situation. And then next, LA at Seattle. Seattle's a team
Seattle.
that's playing for something. Yeah, I'm picking Seattle here. Not LA is, despite that 51-point bomb on Denver, I don't think they can. They're not holding up to that.
Yeah.
Dallas at Washington.
I really don't know how to analyze this game.
I do. Dallas will win.
Oh, yeah. Howell's going to be starting, so we don't know what we're going to get there. It feels like a Ron Rivera move that they're.
I would love for Sam Howell to come out and win you guys the game though.
I mean, I would too, and it kind of seem like Rivera move to kind of win when it doesn't matter and end up 7 and
8-1.
8-1. And I'm still gonna go with the Cowboys though, because I think they're gonna do everything they can to secure that one spot. So I'm gonna go with the Cowboys. I just can't. I'm not picking us.
All right, and I will let you finish out with your game of the week.
So yeah, I got Lions against Packers. It's a division matchup. It has big playoff implications. You have two pretty hot teams going up against each other. They both had rough starts to the season, and it's Sunday night, and I think this is going to be a very good game. I have the Packers eking it out.
I am so glad you said that because I am sticking with riding with my Detroit boys, and I am picking the Lions. I've probably been the biggest believer in the Lions, who is not a Lions fan.
A lot.
That's because I've known they had a good team. So
they're 8-8. Calm down.
We have three different picks. If I get those 3 picks right, I end up pulling out the season. That's kind of crazy. It'll come down because you're only 2 games ahead of me right now.
Yep.
But with that's gonna close off our regular season predictions. We'll come back next week to talk about the wild card round, and we should have news on what's gonna happen with the whole Bills-Bengals game and how that'll play out. But like I said, that'll be back next week. So if you guys want to check that out, that'll be Brotherly Love in the District on YouTube. If you guys want to check out our podcast, that's Brotherly Love in the District on Spotify and Apple. And then we post big news, signings, and all that stuff on Instagram and TikTok over on this side of the screen in the middle. BL in the DC on Instagram and TikTok. And if you guys want to email us questions or comments to put in the show, blindc@gmail.com. And with that, we are going to end it off. So we will see you guys next week.
See you later.